I was on my knees on the cold attic floor when I realized my entire marriage might have been built on a lie. The war chest was heavier than I expected. Old metal, locked. My husband had told me never to open it, but he was dead. And inside that chest was something I was never meant to see: documents, photographs, and a single envelope with my name written on it, in his handwriting. That was the moment I understood why he kept it hidden for decades, and why some secrets don't die with the people who bury them. Stay with me, because I'll tell you exactly what I found inside that war chest, and why, after reading it, I had to make the hardest decision of my life. If you believe real stories matter, stories about truth, trust, and the quiet betrayals no one warns you about, please subscribe to Grandama Moments. These are the lessons we only learn when it's almost too late. My husband and I were married for 43 years. That number still feels unreal when I say it out loud. 43 years of shared breakfasts, folded laundry, quiet arguments, and unspoken routines that only long marriages understand. He was a veteran, not the kind who talked about it, not the kind who wore hats or told stories. The war was something he packed away neatly, the same way he packed everything else that made him uncomfortable, including that chest. It sat in the attic for as long as I could remember. A dull green metal box, scratched and dented, with a heavy latch and a small rusted lock. It wasn't decorative, it wasn't sentimental. It looked official, like something that had once belonged to the government, not a family. The first time I asked about it was early in our marriage. "What's in the chest?" I'd asked casually, standing beneath the attic ladder. He didn't hesitate. "Nothing you need to worry about." That was his way. No explanation, no emotion, just a sentence that ended the conversation. Over the years, I forgot about it. Mostly life fills the space where questions once lived. Children, work, bills, illness, time, until the year he died. There was no long goodbye, no hospital vigil, just a phone call from a stranger's voice telling me my husband had collapsed at the grocery store. I remember standing in my kitchen afterward, staring at the clock on the wall, unable to understand how time was still moving when my world had stopped. Grief does strange things to the mind. Some days, I couldn't remember what I ate. Other days, I remembered every sentence he'd ever spoken to me. A month after the funeral, I decided to clean the house. Not because I was ready, but because sitting still hurts more. I boxed his clothes, sorted paperwork. I opened drawers I hadn't opened in years. Eventually, I stood at the bottom of the attic ladder. I don't know what pulled me up there. Maybe curiosity, maybe instinct, maybe the quiet sense that something unfinished was waiting. The attic smelled like dust and insulation. The air was thick and unmoving, and there it was. The war chest. It looked smaller than I remembered, or maybe I was just seeing it differently now, not as his possession, but as something he had left behind. I knelt beside it. The lock was still there. For a moment, I hesitated. After 43 years of marriage, I was still obeying his silence. Then, I reminded myself, he wasn't here anymore, and whatever was inside, it belonged to the truth now. The lock broke easier than I expected. A sharp snap, metal giving way. The sound echoed in the attic like a gunshot. Inside were folders, thick, yellowed with age, photographs wrapped in cloth, medals I didn't recognize, and letters, so many letters, not addressed to me, not addressed to anyone I knew at first. I thought it was just military paperwork, old records, old memories. Then I saw the envelope, cream-colored, slightly bent at the corners, my name written across the front in careful handwriting. My hands started to shake. I had never seen that envelope before, and I knew immediately it wasn't meant to be found like this. Sat back on my heels and opened it. The letter inside was dated 27 years earlier. The first line stopped my breath. "If you are reading this, it means I never found the courage to tell you myself." I read it once, then again. The words blurred, sharpened, then cut deep. He wrote about the war, about a decision he made, about something he did, or failed to do, that followed him home and never let go. But that wasn't the horrible truth. The horrible truth was what came next. He wrote about a woman, not an affair, not love, responsibility, a child born overseas during the war, a child he never met, a child whose existence he buried beneath duty, distance, and silence. And then came the sentence that shattered everything I thought I knew. "She found me, and I've been helping her quietly for years." My chest tightened. Helping her. Money. documents, arrangements, all done without my knowledge, not because he didn't love me, but because he was afraid. Afraid I'd leave, afraid I'd look at him differently, afraid the truth would cost him the life we built. I sat there for a long time. The attic felt too small, the air is too thin. I thought about every argument we'd ever had about money, every unexplained transfer, every time he shut down when I asked questions. And suddenly, they weren't mysteries anymore. They were answers. At the bottom of the chest, beneath the folders, was another packet. Newer. Recently. Inside were copies of legal documents, names I didn't recognize. Addresses. And a single line highlighted in yellow that made my stomach drop. Beneficiary designation pending final confirmation. That was when I realized this wasn't just about the past, it was about something he planned, something that would reach into my future, and that was the moment I knew the truth inside that chest wasn't finished with me yet. I didn't sleep that night, not because I was afraid, but because my mind refused to stop rearranging the past. I sat at the kitchen table with the war chest documents spread out in front of me, the same table where we had eaten countless quiet dinners, the same surface where he once balanced the checkbook, tapping his pen softly, always careful, always precise. Now I understand why. The clock on the wall ticked loudly, marking time. I couldn't escape. Midnight came and went, then 1 o'clock, then 2. At some point, I poured myself a cup of tea I never drank. It grew cold beside my hand as I stared at the papers again and again, hoping the words would change if I looked at them long enough. They didn't. The truth has a way of staying put. What surprised me most was the absence of rage. I had expected anger, betrayal, a sharp sense of humiliation. Instead, I felt something heavier. Grief layered on grief. I wasn't just mourning my husband anymore. I was mourning the version of him I thought I knew completely. And maybe, in some small way, I was mourning the woman I had been, the one who believed that love always came with full honesty. I picked up his letter again. The paper was soft from age, creased where it had been folded and unfolded, probably many times. I imagined him sitting somewhere alone, writing it, stopping, starting again, wondering if he would ever hand it to me. He never did. That fact hurt more than the secret itself, because it meant he carried this alone for decades, and decided I couldn't be trusted with it. Or worse, that he couldn't survive my reaction. I read the letter slowly this time, not searching for shock, but for understanding. He wrote about fear, about shame, about believing he could handle it quietly. Men of his generation were taught that silence was strength, but silence, I learned, is also a burden you pass down. By morning, I had reached one unavoidable conclusion. This wasn't just a secret about the past. It was a problem that had followed him into death and landed squarely in my lap. I showered, dressed, and drove to the address listed on the documents. The law office was small, clean, neutral, the kind of place designed to make difficult conversations feel ordinary. The attorney was polite, professional, practiced. He spoke carefully, choosing words that sounded reassuring but avoided commitment. Yes, my husband had made arrangements. Yes, there was an overseas beneficiary. Yes, funds had been transferred over time. No, the matter wasn't finalized. Then he slid one document toward me, and that was when my stomach tightened, because at the bottom of the page, where my name was typed neatly, there was a blank line for my signature. Without it, nothing moved forward. Without it, everything stopped. I asked him a simple question. What happens if I don't sign? He paused. That pause told me everything. Then the matter becomes complicated, he said carefully, potentially litigious. Litigious, a cold word for a deeply human problem. I thanked him and left without signing anything in my car. I sat gripping the steering wheel, watching people come and go from the building, as if their lives were untouched by hidden truths. I felt something then. Not anger, not fear. Responsibility. A responsibility I never asked for. A responsibility my husband had postponed until he couldn't anymore. At home, I opened the war chest again. This time, I didn't rush. I examined everything. Receipts, correspondence, proof of support. He hadn't abandoned that. Child Bufta, he hadn't acknowledged them openly either. Had tried to exist in two worlds at once. One built on love and routine, the other built on obligation and guilt. I wondered how many nights he had lain beside me, staring at the ceiling, replaying choices made decades ago, and I wondered if I had ever truly seen him. That afternoon, I walked through the house slowly. Our wedding photo hung in the hallway. His chair sat empty by the window. The life we built felt suddenly fragile, not broken, but exposed. I realized then that whatever I decided next would define not just his legacy, but my own. It would determine who I became after grief. Thought about the woman overseas. I didn't know her name beyond what was written on the documents. I didn't know her life, but I knew this. She had lived with the consequences of the same war, without the comfort of a shared home, without certainty, without acknowledgement. And the child, that thought stayed with me, because children inherit silence they didn't create. That night, I made my decision not because the lawyer pressured me, not because the documents demanded it, but because I refused to let secrecy be the final chapter of my husband's life. I contacted the attorney the next day. I asked questions this time, hard ones. I insisted on clarity, on boundaries, on transparency. I made sure nothing would touch the life I had already lived, my home, my stability, my future. And then, when everything was clear, I signed. Not blindly, not quietly, but consciously. I didn't do it for him, I did it for myself, because carrying resentment would have tied me to a past I couldn't change. Weeks passed. The house grew quieter. Friends asked how I was doing. I gave polite answers. But inside, something had shifted. The secret no longer weighed on me. The war chest sat open now, its contents filed away properly, no longer hidden in the dark. One afternoon, I carried it down from the attic. I cleaned it, removed the rust. I didn't throw it away. I kept it, not as a reminder of betrayal, but as proof that truth, however late, still matters. I've thought often about whether I would have wanted him to tell me earlier. The honest answer is yes, but I also understand why he did in single quotes. Fear makes cowards of good people, and silence often looks like protection when it's really avoidance. In the end, I learned something I never expected to learn at this stage of life. Love doesn't always come with honesty, but integrity is something we choose. Even after love is gone, I don't hate my husband. I don't excuse him either. I accept him fully, flaws, failures, and all. And I carry the lesson forward. Ask questions, read everything, and never assume the people you love have told you the whole truth. Not because they are cruel, but because they are human. Some secrets don't die with us, they wait, and when they surface, they ask something of us. Not anger, not denial, but courage. If this story stayed with you, subscribe to Grandma Moments, and tell me in the comments, have you ever uncovered a truth that changed how you understood someone you loved? Your voice matters here.